Only months after the introduction of the Eversolo DMP-A6, Beatechnik issued a linear power supply to replace the switch mode power supply it normally has. In this video I installed it in my DMP-A6 Master Edition to listen to what the improvements might bring. I reviewed both the Eversolo DMP-A6 Standard and the Master Edition. This linear power supply can be used in both. For people that don't know the Eversolo, it's a streamer aka network player with a large display on the front. It can be controlled from the front or from the free app for smartphone or tablet. It is very reliable, has good software and sounds great. There is support for DLA, Rune, internet radio and a number of popular streaming services. Please watch my video for more information. We've discussed this before. Manufacturers often go for switch mode power supplies in their affordable equipment since they are relatively cheap when average quality is sufficient. They are light since no heavy transformer is needed and one model covers all grid voltages worldwide. In all digital equipment they are ideal since they can deliver current very fast. The disadvantage is that it uses high frequency switching, often in the 50 to 80 kHz range, and when it is leaked into a voltage rail of a DAC or analog circuit it causes sound degradation. The switching frequency can be filtered out completely, but that needs a very knowledgeable designer and costly components. Therefore you see switch mode power supplies mainly with affordable equipment, or with high-end equipment where there is a budget to use very high quality components. With affordable equipment often external switch mode power supplies are used and those can easily be replaced by linear types, as we have seen in earlier videos I made. In both versions of the Eversolo DMP-A6 a switch mode power supply is mounted inside. It therefore is somewhat more complex to replace it with an external power supply like the S-booster. For one, there is no way to connect it, so a special circuit board is needed to replace the standard power supply. On top of that, the Eversolo needs plus 12 volts, minus 12 volts and plus 5 volts DC. Still, since it has a DAC and analog electronics, a better linear power supply could potentially improve the sound quality. Therefore I was keen on trying the Beatechnik LPS-A6 linear power supply. It is tailored for the DMP-A6 and will replace the existing power supply. Opening the Eversolo voids the warranty. If your supplier discovers that you opened it, that is. There's no seal, so opening can't be detected. And if there is a defect not involving the Beatechnik power supply, you can easily refit the original power supply and cable, and if there is a defect not involving the Beatechnik power supply, you can easily refit the original power supply and cable if you're clever enough to keep the old cable and remaining screws. Let's look inside the Eversolo, but first disconnect the mains power. All screws on the back and on the bottom have to be removed using a hex screwdriver. Then push the cover a few centimeters to the front and move the rear of the cover upwards. Be careful, there are two short cables between the main board and the front you don't want to damage. Inside we see the power supply on the right. It is mounted on a separate circuit board and connected to the mains board over a small cable. The IEC mains inlet and power switch are mounted on the power board and are accessible through an opening in the rear. This makes it easy to take out the power supply board only. Just disconnect the short cable that connects it to the main board and loosen 6 screws. The Beatechnik power supply has exactly the same measures and has the same IEC mains inlet and power switch at the same position. Due to the size of the transformer, the Beatechnik board has only 4 screw holes. It has to be mounted on the same position using these. To get it at the correct height, 4 filler rings have to be added between the board and the chassis. This is a bit fiddly. I used a small lick of clear nail reinforcer I had at hand to stick the rings to the circuit board. That way they remained at place during montage. After that, the original short cable was removed from the main board and the silver power cable that came with the Beatechnik was used to connect the power supply to the main board. Let's take a closer look at the subject at hand. There is a combined block that contains the IC mains inlet and the main switch. Behind it some capacitors and an inductor to do some first filtering. A shorted gold fuse protects the electronics and the Talema encapsulated toroidal transformer. Depending on your grid voltage, it transforms either 115 or 230 volts AC into 2 times 12 volts AC. On the other side of the transformer we see the high current MOSFET voltage regulators, one for plus 12 volts DC, one for minus 12 volts DC and one for plus 5 volts DC. 3 times 4700 microfarads and 6 times 680 microfarads capacitors provide buffering as a water tower buffers water supply by pumping the water into a highly placed tank. The varying pressure of the pump is evened out by gravity. It is about the same these capacitors do for the voltage and current. The steady voltages then go to this connector and over the Beatechnik supplied silver cable to the main board of the Eversolo. On the back of the board we find 8 Schottky diodes that form fast rectifiers and high slew rate op amps. The diodes are a kind of electronic valves that let through electrons in one direction only. By putting 4 in a square shape, the positive voltage passes it normally, while the negative voltage is flipped to be positive too. Here's how it works. The positive voltage comes in at the top of the square and has only one way to go. Back down is blocked by a diode, down forward not, so the voltage goes to the output. The negative voltage can only go up forward and so ends up in the output as well, but now as a positive voltage. This repeats itself 50 or 60 times per second depending on the grid frequency. The result isn't a steady direct current. This is where the capacitors play their water tower role. They even out the voltage. The voltage regulators bring it to required voltage. After the Beatechnik power supply is mounted and the silver cable is connected between the power supply and the main board, it looks like this. You then have to carefully place the cover back. Again be careful with the 2 short cables I mentioned before. On the photo they are removed, but it's better to leave them as they are. Once closed, the Eversolo works as before, except for some small differences. Since it now has a linear power supply, it will only work on 100 to 120 volts or 220 to 240 volts AC, depending on where you live. Someone with the right knowledge can easily modify the Beatechnik power supply from the 115 to the 230 volt setting, or vice versa though. A second difference is that using more than one USB drive is not possible due to current limitations. A simple solution is to use a powered hard drive or use a powered USB hub and connect both drives to that. One last remark is on the temperature of the linear power supply. It runs somewhat hotter than the standard power supply, around 40 degrees Celsius, when used for days in a row. Testing such a power supply is a lot of work. I first installed the Beatechnik and have it play for 7 days around the clock to burn it in. I used the room playlist on repeat. I then built back the original power supply, started listening for an hour, built back the Beatechnik and listened to the same tracks. I repeated this 3 times more on other days and switched between setup 2A and 1B. In my setup 2A it was connected to the network over the Uptone Audio Ether Regen switch with the Uptone Audio UltraCaps 1.2 power supply. From there a fiber connection to the Netgear ProSafe GS418 TPP switch on the 3rd floor. See About My Reference Setups May 2023 for more information. Links at the usual places. The analog outputs were connected to the Marantz PMKI Pearl Light amplifier over Siltech London RCA cables. It drives the Acoustic Energy Radiance 1 loudspeakers on target stands and with stack OVO 50 isolators, and is connected over Kimber 4 PR loudspeaker cable. They are supported by the REL T5 subwoofer that is connected to the loudspeaker terminals on the Marantz using the cable that came with the sub. The Intel NUC 10i7 FNH runs Roon Rock on a M.2 SSD and has the music stored on an internal 8TB Samsung SSD drive. An iPad Pro running Eversolo and Roon apps was used to control the Eversolo. The equipment was housed in a target rack. After the burn-in, the sound was more relaxed, had less stress. Lows were just as firm as with the original power supply, but had more texture. The stereo image was slightly deeper and more involving. Mid-range showed more resolution and sibilance was better controlled, so voices and brass sounded more natural, strings more rounded. It doesn't make the Eversolo Master Edition a €4,000 streamer, but it does come close to €2,000. In setup 1B, the Eversolo Beatechnik was connected to the Air Acoustics AX520 over Grim Audio SQM XLR cables. The PMC FAC 12 signature loudspeakers on stack over 70 isolators were connected to the amp over AudioQuest Robin Hood Zero loudspeaker cable. Connection to the network was over Zixel GS1900-10 HP switch. Connected to the Eversolo over the Network Acoustics Eno System Ethernet filter. The iPad Pro running the Eversolo and Roon apps was used to select music. Roon came again from the Intel NUC 10i7 FNH running Roon Rock on an M.2 SSD and has the music stored on an internal 8TB Samsung SSD drive. Here the experience is about the same. Improvement in sound quality here is primarily to the higher quality of the setup. Looking at my notes on testing the Eversolo Master Edition with the standard power supply, the sound quality surely went up a notch, mainly the more stress-free sound and the improved pace and rhythm. It now sounds about equal, although not identical, to the Mytek Brooklyn. It has about equal resolution in the mids and highs and better resolution in the lows. I therefore rank the Eversolo DMP-A6 Master Edition with Beatechnik LPS-A6 mid setup 1B. Some might find it scary to get inside the device and swap out the power supply. If that's you, I'm not going to convince you to go for it. I simply don't want to. You do it at your own risk and you avoid your warranty. If that's not you, I can assure you that if you follow the instructions in the video on the Vinshine Audio channel on YouTube, there is very little that can go wrong. Even if the fine motor skills of your hands are like mine. It makes an already fine streamer sound even more refined at the penalty of only $286 including shipping, excluding local sales tax. For Europe that will be around €325 including VAT. Which brings us to the end of this video. See you next week, Friday 5 PM Central European Time. If you don't want to miss that, subscribe to my channel or follow me on the social media so you will be informed when new videos are out. Help me reach even more people by giving this video a thumb up or link to this video on the social media. It is much appreciated. Many thanks to those viewers that support this channel financially. It keeps me independent and lets me improve the channel further. If that makes you feel like supporting my work too, the links are in the comments below this video on YouTube. I am Hans Beekhuizen, thank you for watching and see you next Friday or on Patreon. And whatever you do, enjoy the music.